Hey folks, this week on Soft Plastics 101 we're going to talk about stinger hooks. So if you're watching videos and reading articles about soft plastics fishing, you're probably going to come across the term stinger. And basically a stinger is an additional hook that's added to a soft plastic to increase your hookup rate. Generally you don't use stingers a lot of the time. You know, you can choose a jig hook to suit your soft plastic and the species you're targeting, and often you don't need to worry about a stinger hook. And I always say to people, if you can avoid using a stinger hook, that's a good thing, because you've got more hooks, more tangles, more damage to the fish, more unhooking and getting things out. So there's a few things you can do to avoid using a stinger hook firstly and increase your hookup rate without a stinger. One of those is vary your retrieve. So if you're retrieving and you're getting bites but you're not hooking up, try a longer pause or a quicker retrieve or a slower retrieve, or hop that more aggressively and see if you can increase your hookup rate that way. If that doesn't work, add scent. Scent can always work in terms of getting that fish to hold on longer, making the fish bite more aggressively, and that way if you're getting them attacking the lure more aggressively, you can do away with that stinger hook a lot of the time as well. And thirdly, if you're getting those short strikes and you're not hooking up, try downsizing your plastic. So go from a 4-inch to a 3-inch, or a 3-inch to a 2.5. That'll get in their mouth a bit better, and sometimes you'll find that increases your hookup rate as well. You may be rolling a 3-inch plastic around for a flatty and getting lots of brim bites. Downsize to say a 2.5-inch grubs, boom, you start catching brim because that's what's biting at your soft plastic. In terms of stingers though, there's a few different ways that you can rig them, and there's a bunch of different stingers available. So you can get commercially made stingers that actually slide onto your hook. The little bead slides up to lock it in place, and you just slot your stinger into your plastic and away you go, you've got an extra hook. So that's like that one there. Our hook is simply, it's looped on, pulled up tight, and our second hook is attached in there. So that's a commercially made stinger. Otherwise, just grab yourself some single hooks or a treble, and you can use those as a stinger, attached with mono or attached with wire even if you're chasing something like mackerel. Important thing to remember, if you're choosing single hooks, make sure that your single hook has a straight shank. It doesn't have an offset. If you're rigging with an offset, the hook can sit funny, it can cause the plastic to swim funny. So there's a bunch of straight shank hooks available that are perfect. And I tend to go for a shorter shank on the hook as well, because the more shank you've got embedded in the plastic, the more it can restrict the action and movement of the plastic as well. So keep those shanks short and keep them straight as well. Let's have a look at a few examples of some stinger hooks that I've got rigged here. So brim are a prime species for a stinger hook. Lots of brim tournaments have been won with a stinger hook when they're not committing. So something like this ZMan TRD Craws 2.5-inch, you can see there we've got appendages that move around. So those appendages, because brim will often pick at the lure, they will pick at these claws. Now we've caught lots of brim that have just inhaled this and eaten the whole thing, but if they are picky, we can put a couple of stingers in that claw. So on this plastic we've got 2 little trebles on those claws, and we've actually just threaded mono with a needle back through and looped it through the eye of the hook. So being ElaZtech, Z-Man, being buoyant, those claws will still float up off the bottom, and if the brim comes down and picks at that claw, they're going to find that treble, fish on, away we go. I've also got one rigged here as well that I rigged with 2 small singles. So those little singles will be less prone to tangling than a treble, but again, nice and sticky, fine gauge, chemically sharpened hook. Brim comes and grabs that claw, fish on, increase our chance. So that's using a stinger in the appendages of the plastic that the fish may eat. We can also use a stinger to increase the hookup and hook zone of our plastic. So on this large plastic here, we've got it rigged with stingers. In this case, we've got a treble, and we actually just embed one of the treble barbs into the plastic, and that leaves 2 hanging there. So if we get a hit from underneath or a short strike on the back, we can hook up using that treble. And again, we just run mono or wire through to the eye of our hook. And then this one here I've rigged with a single, and I like singles a lot of the time as stingers, because even with all that tail movement, it's less likely to catch up on that single, but if a fish grabs it, you're going to hook up nice and firmly on that single hook. So that's increasing the length of the plastic. And the other one we showed earlier with that pre-rigged as well, we've increased the length of that plastic to get hook up from short strikes. Another way you can rig them is even on surface lures. So that's a weedless frog, and we love to buzz those frogs for barra, cod, and all sorts of other species as well, jacks, even trevally. And I've had a lot of fun sessions where we found some open water, so the fish aren't holding tight in weed or tight in trees. So I can just swing a treble on the back there and increase the hookup rate on the back of that frog. So we've had some great fun on the trevally, just fun-sized trevally on the afternoon on the flats, and they smash that treble and get hooked up a lot more effectively. So there you go, that's rigged on a weedless. And then another cool option is the TT Lures Swimlocks jig head. So that Swimlocks is a nice sturdy jig head in big sizes, currently designed for big swim baits, but will get smaller over time. And they've got a second attachment point on the bottom. So that attachment point is where you attach your stinger. So in this case, we've swung a treble off there, just using a split ring. We've got a treble attached. We've hooked one barb in the bottom, increases that hookup rate. Otherwise, you can also attach wire or mono and put a stinger further back in the tail again, increasing that hookup zone throughout the plastic. So there you go. That's a few options for rigging stingers. As we mentioned, if you can avoid them and use some other techniques to increase your hookup rates, that's great. If not, there's a few options to have a look at in terms of rigging stingers on your soft plastics. All the best with the fishing.